plot armor, pacing. All three of these things can be used to describe the hit anime Sword Art Online, an anime that's so popular that's yielded multiple seasons and spin-offs. With its popularity, obviously, it comes with a lot of criticism and a lot of people looking deeper and realizing, hey, some of these things are weird. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my personal opinion on the series, and specifically the first season, because when rewatching this, oh my god, it's weird. I could barely get through season 1. I was not watching anymore. Spoilers, of course, but if you looked down the video, I'm going to assume you watched it. I know it's been a while since I've posted JoJohinki Nation, and I apologize. I will get better. We're going to talk about Sword Art Online, the first anime that I have ever watched. Little me, I was like, a bit of a gamer playing on my Nintendo Wii. But at the time, I felt like the stuff I was watching really didn't reflect that side of me, Nothing really spoke to me, and that's when I was scrolling Netflix one day and I saw Sword Art Online. And little 12-year-old me loved that shit. I loved that the main protagonist just fucking wrecked everybody. I loved that, hey, this guy's OP. Hey, this guy has a vision. Hey, this guy's determined. And all that was cool to little 12-year-old Jordan. And picking it up a decade after my original watch made me realize so many things. I had nothing but fond memories and nostalgia heading into this. And the first topic I want to tackle in this video is pacing. I think the pacing of this show is absolutely terrible. I think that the general idea for the show is super cool, right? You go in, you're thinking, okay, this is something I've never seen before. Like, to me, I had not seen this until this point, and I think that it was a cool kind of idea to have, that you're dying in this game, you die in real life. So I think that in itself is a super cool concept that I could watch 2 seasons of. The thing that gets me is that you have these very heavily video game inspired enemies and bosses, and it's super cool because normally you fight those and the stakes don't feel crazy, but now when you're watching this show, those stakes are 10 times higher. Instead of losing your save, losing your progress, losing some items, you're fighting for your literal life. Every time you step out to go grind, or every time you step out to go fight an enemy, there's at least a small party that's like, this could be the last time I step out of here. And that to me already creates an underlying tension with the show. These very tense moments where, hey, not only can other players kill you, but one wrong boss encounter and you're dead. One wrong grinding session and you're dead. One wrong move and you're dead. You're donezo, no matter how good you are. That goes against the nature of an MMO, where you need to grind, you need to get a bunch of XP, you need to do all these things and play a lot. That one thing the show does well, before I get into the pacing, is that it does show all these different sides. It shows us, children that play these games. It shows us people that don't fight on the front lines, as they say. They stay in towns, they don't venture out, they don't even want to risk dying. And it shows us in one of the arcs with the main protagonist what can happen if you enter a trap. Hey, one trap, you're fucking dead, like, be cautious. So I think all these things are cool and are things we take for granted when we play a normal game, right? So with all that underlying tension, groundwork is laid out for you. And you fumble it, because in 12, 13 episodes, the game's over. It's like a 3-year span, I think they were stuck in that game, and it showed in about 13 episodes. And I think that in itself is a crime. A lot happens, or has had to happen in those 3 years. We get a cool little enemies to lover arc. We get, obviously Kirito being overpowered as fuck, but we never see him, we never see why he hits that point. We never see the struggles he's gone through to reach that status. We never see what Asuna up to. We never see what Klein's up to. We never see what Egil's up to. We don't see what the characters are up to, and there's so many unique characters here who have different perspectives on how they're playing this game, that I feel like it's cheating the audience of knowing your characters better, and it makes the deaths of these characters and us caring about these characters 10 times more important if we get to know them a little better. There's not a lot of interaction, right? That's not a lot you can get done, especially when you consider that one of those episodes is I'm leaving the game, and one of those episodes is I'm entering the game, and 2 of those episodes are focused on one arc, focused on player killing, which is an important topic, but that leaves you less than 10 episodes to explain everything else that's happening. We get some good character development with the arc I talked about with our main protagonist, where he feels responsible for the rest of his underleveled guild dying. But I think there was a missed opportunity to show him fighting his way out, him having to stress about, am I going to make it out of here alive? I just watched everyone die, and basically watching him go from total sadness, watching all the friends around him die, to, oh my god, survival mode, I need to fucking live, right? We don't get to see that raw reaction. We get to fast forward a few weeks later, where he tries to revive someone. Which, little side note, kind of dumb that he goes through all the trouble to get that little Christmas item that revives someone. He gives it to Klein, and Klein never uses it. I thought he could have potentially died when he was fighting the blue boss by himself to save all the Admiral people, and I thought when he died, Klein would use the item. It would be like a full circle moment, but that never happens. It's never used. So yeah, the pacing really gets me, because fitting that long of a stretch of time into such a long thing, you know, you could have done so much more world exploration, so much more character development, so many more little arcs that showcase different parts of this world. And instead we're kind of like zooming through each thing, zooming through the main plot points, and basically skipping the side quests, to put in video game terms. Like, you're not learning the little things that make the world, you're not learning about the other floors. There's a time we skip all the way up to the 60s and the floors, and we're like, we've maybe seen, what, 2 boss fights at this point, and there's 100 floors. So when you think about the pacing of this show, it's not good. It really isn't. It's hard to care about any character that isn't Kirito and Asuna. It's hard to get invested in a lot of these fights when a lot of them are just nobodies, when we don't see the development or the training leading up to this point. There's no real training arcs, which, you know, a lot of people don't like those, but I think they're important in a show like this, especially when, you know, you're watching a person level up and learn skills. Even if you didn't want to go multiple seasons, even if you didn't want to go crazy, I feel like there's so much missed opportunity to build that original Sword Art Online world that we missed out on. We didn't get to see a bunch of the bosses. We didn't get to see a bunch of the enemies. There's no real gameplay footage. It's something that you can build upon. I don't think it's bad. I know, like, people discuss the plot armor, which I'll get into in a second. But honestly, like, if you want to make a show where the main character is really good and broken, like, to showcase how MMOs can be unfair, which is something he says in the show.
If your numbers are high enough, you're invincible. MMOs that use leveling systems are unfair that way.
I personally don't think it's the best way to write a character or to showcase this idea, but if that's something you want to do, that's fine. But expand it to a full season or something, man, because rewatching this show and seeing, hey, there's so much opportunity for impactful character deaths, something that, like Attack on Titan, right? Obviously, maybe not to that degree, but something like Attack on Titan, where when a character dies, you feel it, right? When Bertolt dies, it affects you. When Sasha dies, it affects you, right? When John and Connie are about to die at the end, that affects you. When Eren gets his head cut off, that affects you. That makes you feel something. That, as an audience, you're like, fuck, like, I did not want that guy to die. That fucking blows. And in this show that's described as a death game that heavily emphasizes this tension, we don't see these characters die. If you have a name at this point, you're gonna live, aside from the aforementioned guild and that one guy at the beginning. I really think that, aside with the pacing, that kind of emphasis on the main tense part of this story that drives the plot forward could have really been aided by some actual character deaths. Okay, moving on from pacing, moving on from those important plot points and what I think could have been done better. I think the plot armor is obviously an issue. I personally am not a fan of when a character has plot armor and I'm like, okay, like, you know, they're gonna live, they're gonna fight through this. I know I'm saying the word tension a lot, but it gets rid of a lot of that tension that you feel during fights where one person's gonna die, especially in a 1v1, right? So when you know a character's really good and you know a character can't really fail, it's hard to, you know, feel these moments. I feel like you're missing out on a lot of emotion that your audience could be feeling. And I think what really made me realize it on the rewatch, when he fights that boss, he pulls out the dual wielding for the first time, and that really made me think, okay, they're describing this talent he has that one person the whole server has that makes him solo a boss like 50 levels up, which normally you need a bunch of people for, right? So it's at that moment when he has like this much health left, and I'm like, okay, like, this was a cool scene, like, the animation's really good, you know, the reason he did it was really good, it wasn't egotistical, it was to save people. Like, I think all of that is cool, but like I said, you could have actually had him die, and Klein used the revive thing that he gave him earlier. You could have actually had him die. You could have had someone else important in the story like Klein or Asuna die, and he fails to save them. And the fact that they just let him solo the boss by himself, that was really the point for me, where I was like, okay, this is getting a little absurd. And I think the level they went with his overpoweredness is a little crazy, but at the end of the day, it's not as big of a complaint as I have with the pacing. And, you know, there's people who enjoy shows where, you know, the main character is just fucking owning, right? But to me personally, I think it's a little much. And a lot of the, I wouldn't say horror, but a lot of the psychological struggles that these characters are going through, I think that really undermines it, especially with our main protagonist, the person we're following throughout the show, when they're not really facing that mental struggle because, oh, I'm just really good. The last thing I wanted to touch upon was, I know I'm mainly sticking to this first, 12, 13 episodes. I don't even know if I can say this word on YouTube, but the family bonding portion, where his cousin falls in love with him and stuff. I mean, I think a lot of people think that's weird. I think it's weird. I think that's an arc that we just didn't need. I think that's just a subplot that was totally uncalled for. I get, maybe you're trying to go for the, you never know who you're meeting online. They could be someone you're related to. Don't fall in love online. But the thing that I would counteract that with is, from the jump in this second half of this first season, you can tell that she's into him. And that, when she gets on the game and she's thinking about Kirito, and she's like, oh, I like you. She's also thinking about Kazuto, so it's like, you're still thinking about your cousin in that way, and that's weird, right? Even before you hit this point where you've fallen in love with some VR dude who happens to be your cousin. It's really fucking stupid when you're doing it in real life too, and you're like, oh, she's getting over her cousin by falling in love with this online guy who's also her cousin. So that's strange. The other thing I think is weird is the big bad guy in this, he likes children. Even when we first meet this guy, he walks in the room and starts playing with her hair and sniffs it in front of her father, by the way, and in front of him. And he's like, yeah, we're getting married while she's sleeping. And for some reason, Asuno's father's like, yeah, this guy seems legit. He's basically a son to me. I'll let him defile my daughter's sniffer hair. And I think that is just, there's no way of defending that, right? He's obviously a creep with the way he's talking, the way he's like touching her and looking at her. And I think this just crosses over the line of completely unrealistic. And the way they say it, like, hey, we're just gonna adopt him. And that's gonna be like, we're legally married. I don't know how the fuck that makes sense. I'm gonna adopt this guy, which basically means that him and my daughter are married. Instead of the instant reaction I had, which was, oh, so she's gonna marry her brother. The family liking family thing a little too much is very weird and only really starts happening in that second half of the first season. With that, those are the three main things I wanted to touch upon. But before I go, what did you think of Sword Art Online? Do you like the show? Should I watch past season 1? What other things should I watch, talk about? Just let me know in the comments. Appreciate all your support. Like and subscribe while you're down there. I appreciate you guys. Have a good day. JoJohinki Nation, I love you. Peace.